Our guest tonight is Phillip Comella. Phillip is an Illinois resident, not that far from Chicago. Again, his book is called The Collapse of Materialism, Visions of Science, Dreams of God. Phillip, it's a deep one, but deep thought on this one, my friend. You've really got to open up and think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like anything else. If you want to fix something, sometimes you got to take it down to ground zero.
Right, exactly.
And that's really what it is. You can't patch like patches on a leaking boat, and so when you sort of disassemble, our modern scientific worldview and the religious worldview, and you say, okay, let's start the process all over again. Let's see where we were, and you sort of build it from step by step, from Descartes. I think therefore I am, and you sort of build it up. Things start making more sense. So the good news is that I think it only has to be done once, and then you could enjoy yourself. So that's sort of what I think is the beauty of it.
In your book, you talk a little bit about the paranormal. Let's go click in a couple levels deep here. When we talk about the paranormal, of course, in pretty much everybody's minds, that's the physical signs, if you will, and it can run a lot deeper than that. But the physical signs that us humans see or hear through EVPs or through photographs or what have you from those that have passed on, where they've passed on to, who knows? What's your take on the paranormal?
Well, it's an awfully, as you know, it's an awfully big field. There's a lot of phenomena that are included in the paranormal. But one of the things, one way to look at the paranormal is natural things that aren't quite understood yet. That's the way I would prefer to look at them, and we call them paranormal because it's as your show's called, or it's on the fringe.
Right.
Modern science it doesn't understand these things, so much of science sort of dismisses all of it or puts it way out there as not having legitimacy because it doesn't fit into the model. The model being that we're machines with no connections between us. So I think that the paranormal shows that again, we don't live in the world of the machine, that there is a connection between us, that we are really spirits, and that under the right conditions, spirits can communicate with each other, with other people. The whole notion of spirits after death and where we go, I don't know. All I'm saying here is that it's possible. There's been so many valid or very legitimate accounts of life after death experiences, for example, as you know. And in my worldview, that's all possible. It's possible. It's not something that you have to sort of call crazy or fraud or imaginary. It's possible. It's one of the features of our world. So the only thing I would add there is that I think it opens up the variety of experience. It makes it a richer world when we bring these things into our lives. But also, it doesn't mean that everything is valid. You still have to go through the questioning process. So I think I use the paranormal as an example of how we live in a world of the mind of spirit, and because I do think that the evidence is overwhelming that at least some of these things are true.
Do you think science, Phillip, is becoming a little bit more? You've got. I think there's a couple different categories. You have scientists that are out there that are starting to be more open-minded as far as the paranormal world. People, seeing ufology is an example. Another thing that now is, for so many years to talk about seeing flying saucers or extraterrestrials, or abduction scenarios. I mean, they throw you in a rubber room, they'd consider you crazy.
Right.
But now, more and more, now we're getting world leaders that are stepping up. Matter of fact, in Argentina right now, there's been a lot of, I shouldn't say controversy, but there's been a big stir of something that the scientists are starting to say, hey, that's not an airplane. That could be potentially something not of this world. And scientists are being a little bit more accepting of the possibilities of crafts or visitors from other worlds. Are the debunkers going away a little bit, do you think? Or, you know, the true scientists, the true scientific community, do they still feel that paranormal research is nothing more than a bunch of hocus pocus? Because it seems that you, well, it doesn't seem, you have your finger kind of on the pulse of all this.
Well, I think that mainstream science does not give the paranormal any weight. Okay, and the source that I use for this in my own book, and I think it sort of reflects the position of science, is from Steven Weinberg, who wrote a book called Dreams of a Final Theory. And Steven Weinberg won the Nobel Prize for the electroweak theory back in, I think, the 80s or so. But what he writes in his book, he says, we don't understand everything, but we understand enough to know that there is no room in our world for telekinesis or astrology. What possible signal from our brains can move distant objects and yet have no effect on any scientific instruments? Okay, so this is just one statement from a leading scientist who's saying that the reason why they don't go and support the paranormal is because they don't have any theory to support it. Okay, it doesn't fit into their model. They can't measure that spiritual essence or that mind over matter or the thoughts between people. With regard to UFOs and all that, I look at that like a lawyer would, which is what's the evidence and what's the supporting logic. To me, it's a matter of proof. You got to look at the evidence. You should not rule it out because it doesn't fit into your preconceptions. See, that's the difference, Pat. That I think it's possible, but you got it. But show me the proof. That's
right.
The way I would look at it. Show me the proof, but I'm not going to rule it out because it doesn't fit into my beliefs. And that's what many scientists are doing. The last point I'm going to make is that there is SETI. There is. You're right. I mean, at the same time, when a lot of scientists debunk UFOs, they're also looking for life on other planets. So there's a bit of a little inconsistency there.
Sure.
So.
Well, and the thing too is, you know, for what it's worth, and I've said this so many times, I think there's a lot of people that have seen things. I know myself, I have. I believe that when you look up at night and we see all the stars, whatever this all may be, I think there's more to it than just us out there. But until with the average, with most people, until they see one of these craft in the Smithsonian or something like that, they're not going to believe. They're not going to buy into it.
Right. But and I think it's in some ways it's fair because nothing beats evidence. I mean nothing, and so. But as I said before, I mean, to me, that's being a true scientist, is looking at the evidence and then making your decisions. Exactly. And instead of saying, "Oh, they're impossible," don't bother me with that stuff.
Another question for you is: it says, does Phillip ever envision a time where our consciousness may be uploaded into a machine, aka transhumanism, and would we still be a part of this holographic dream environment?
What? No, I don't really go in that direction. You see, it's I guess it's possible, but I think that it's necessary to be, to me, a little bit more conservative. I'm more conservative on this. I think that the goal of our universe is the goal it's always been, which is peace on earth, heaven on earth, a uniting in physical form that which is united at the spiritual level. And so I think that the raising of consciousness is a raising where we understand who we are. I think that as time goes on, and I'm knocking on wood here, that we still use technology, but we use it to better humanity. We don't use it to build bigger bombs or to explode matter or to destroy the environment. We use it to feed people, to shelter people, to make people active, and to entertain, to enjoy ourselves. So, we're sort of moving in that direction when you think about it, because a lot of technology, such as the internet and cell phones, music, Xboxes and everything, we are moving in that entertainment mode, which I think is great. But we need to sort of change the direction of our use of technology away from making war to making peace. Okay?
I would agree. And one of your talking points here, Philip, that was sent to me, you talk a little bit, or there's the bullet point of the, was it the Hadron Collider?
Right.
Do you think and again, maybe that stems back to what you just said, we're maybe playing with things we shouldn't be?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Large Hadron Collider, which is also the world's most expensive scientific instrument, and really a metaphor for science's search for God in a particle. I mean, isn't it ironic that science announced that they found the God particle? They're looking for God in a thing. If you're wondering what materialism is, that's what materialism is. They're looking for the secret to life in a thing. See, I would have preferred that we spent the $6 billion that was spent on the Large Hadron Collider on feeding people, sheltering people, and getting people jobs.
Right.
See, I think we need to, and maybe I'm old school, and again, I'm idealistic, but I think we have to nurture the human spirit, not explode particles. See, I think it's a waste of time to explode particles. So
I agree.
It's amazing to me the resources. I mean the Large Hadron Collider, and I'm gonna distort this is not going to be completely accurate, but it takes up the electricity of a small city just to run that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a monument to, I think, science's misguided effort to find truth in a particle. And of course, I'm pretty radical on this, but I feel strongly that it's a waste of money.
Oh no, I agree. I mean, it's I agree with you. I mean, I believe that there are things out there that we need to do for the betterment of humanity and mankind. But like you said, when people have nowhere to sleep, when kids are dying of starvation, I think there's we need to turn our attention to the more humanistic things. It's really sad that how we can a lot of us, we as a people, we can look the other way and get hung up in those materialistic things, and we know that people are going to bed hungry and people are dying of starvation.
Yeah, I haven't even, I mean, most people don't understand what the Large Hadron Collider is even doing, or what the God particle is. Now, I could explain it, but it's sort of technical. But the one thing that's really sort of interesting here, among other things, is that in the 90s, the American science community tried to convince Congress to build the super colliding collider in Texas at $3 or $4 billion. And Congress originally gave them the money, but then they stopped. And one of the reasons was not only how expensive it was, but that the scientists couldn't explain what the heck they were going to do with this thing. And so to me, it's also a communication issue, Pat, that science is becoming distant from the normal person on the street. We don't know what these guys are doing. I mean, who in the world understands the God particle or the Higgs boson? I mean, I sort of understand it because I've studied it, but and you could take, not take my word for it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense what it is. But truth should not be so foreign to us. It should be something anybody could connect to. See? Anybody could connect to the fact, I think, that you need to feed people, shelter people, give them something to do first. Then you can go off on your wild tangents, you know.
Right.
But our priorities are mixed up because the scientists are pursuing truth in the wrong direction and down a dead-end street.
At a 10,000-foot level, what is the God particle? I honestly don't understand. I've read different things. What's kind of a layman's definition? What's kind of a simple definition? And I know it's not a simple subject, but that most people could understand.
Okay, one of the mysteries of physics is why the particles, the elementary particles, of which there's like 25 to 50, depending how you count them, why they have different masses. Okay, now, most people say, well, big deal, but it's an issue for science because their formulas require all particles to have zero mass. In other words, the formulas they use to describe physical reality, all the particles have to have zero mass. But when they look at the particles, they don't have zero mass. They have masses in an order of magnitude between 10 and 13 different orders of magnitude. So the God particle is really the mediator of a field called the Higgs field in which these zero mass particles move through and they pick up mass. So the masses are not part of the actual particle. The masses are contributed by the Higgs field, and the Higgs particle is the particle that mediates the Higgs field. I told you it doesn't. That's what it is. I mean, and just look at it this way. It's another invisible field out there that science think is out there in the universe, permeates the entire world, and zero mass particles, including ourselves, we move through this field and we pick up mass. And he asked the big question, okay, dear scientists, well, why does the Higgs field contribute these different masses? Where do the masses come from? The answer is they have no clue. So the Higgs field is really a mathematical construct. That's really what it is. I don't think it's real. It's part of a mathematical model that is dying. So that's what it is. It's simply as I can explain it.
Gotcha.
So good luck with that one. You asked the question.
Sure.
That's basically what it is.
Well, you know what it kind of comes down to, Phil, is that a lot of these, I think what it comes down to is it's complicated enough for most. A lot of big words can be used, and the government can get their budget in the billions of dollars for people, where the average lay guy goes, well, that sounds cool. We've got to find out these things. Sure, here's my vote. Go ahead, spend it.
Yeah. Well, the guys that think they discovered it got the Nobel Prize, the most distinguished prize in the world, the Nobel Prize in physics, like $1 million and a lifetime honors, and they didn't really find or see anything. What they really saw was a bunch of decay patterns on a computer screen. Okay, that's one thing. Now let me make another point that is very important here. What is the ultimate purpose of science? Isn't it, when you think about, isn't it to control the world, to master the world, to make a better life? Well, how does finding the God particle make a better life for anybody? I mean, do you feel happier because they found the God particle, or supposedly found the God particle? What did it do for the guy on the street?
Nothing.
Not one iota, nothing. And so that's where I'm saying that science is becoming farther and farther removed from what I think is reality, but also from the problems that real people face. They're off on these academic pursuits that aren't doing anyone any good.
Well, and I think there's a lot of things out there that science can help people with. I think I think there's a lot of marvels out there. There's a lot of things that can be solved. But again, I think we're kind of spending our money in a place that again, after everybody's been fed and clothed and housed, or has the opportunity to be able to participate in that, then it's worth moving on and looking forward. Another question that came in, it said, Philip, can you tell us about your work as an environmental lawyer, and what do you think about global warming and other hazardous environmental issues facing our planet today?
Well, that's great. That's great, because I'm an environmental lawyer, and I do think that global warming is a big problem, and I think that, to me, one of the interesting parts of it is how a scientific issue has become politicized. You know, which is really sad, and that there's a lot of debate in the scientific community on this, and this is where I'm in favor of science. I mean, I'm against the scientific model, but if the evidence, the data shows that humankind is contributing to global warming, then that is a problem, and everyone's got to realize it. It shouldn't be a political issue. It shouldn't be whether you're Republican or Democrat on whether global warming is true or not. So I think that's the big question. We need to make the scientific questions be answered in a scientific manner, not in a political manner. Okay, and I think that it's sort of a tangent, Pat, but it's something that is wrong with our political system, where we sort of toss this aside and think that it's a matter of voting. It's something that everybody should be joined together to figure out how to deal with it. Because I think the evidence is close to overwhelming that humankind is contributing to global warming.
Right.
So I'm a big fan of renewable energy and clean energy.
Do you think that we're, as far as renewable energy and clean energy and solar and all this other stuff, Philip, do you think we're marching down the right road? I mean, you know, and I don't want to get into the political side. This station is 99. Well, it's with the exception of one or two shows, this being one or two. Of course, we're a conservative political talk radio station, so I don't want to go the political route. But it seemed like there was the onslaught of solar power, wind power, that came up over the past few years, and now it's kind of starting to die off a little bit. Do you think, in general, with our country, do you think we're moving in the right direction, or was it kind of the big bang of green energy, and now we've kind of throttled back and we're going into our old ways of thinking again?
Well, it's an awfully difficult question, because it's economics versus the environment, which is always the battle with environmental issues. It's always environment versus economics, environment versus jobs versus business, and you have to find that middle ground where the lights stay on, but you don't pollute the environment any more than you have to. I mean, I'm a big fan of incentives for renewable energy, but it's going to take a while to sort of draw ourselves away from the dependence on coal, for example. So there has to be a gradual movement away from the dependence on the dirty fuels, on the fossil fuels, towards the clean fuels. And when you think about it, it's consistent with everything else I've been saying on this show, which is that we have to take responsibility for the world that we live in. It's not, and, you know, I'm also saying at a deeper level, it's the world we create, and I hope that if that becomes accepted, then we start taking a little bit more responsibility for it from ground up, and that means we need to reduce the pollution that we emit into the environment.
Right, exactly. Let's go back a little bit to the topic at hand with some more questions that came in. It says, Philip, what type of interdimensional beings would have the capability of creating our universe, and is it tied into our own creation as a species on Earth?
Well, I'm not so sure what interdimensional is. You see, what I think is really important here is that a lot of what I'm saying, if not everything I'm saying, grows out of intellectual history. For example, Immanuel Kant, the German 18th century philosopher who is credited with being one of the three greatest thinkers of all time, he thought that the mind imposed dimensions upon experience. We need 3 dimensions in order to have an experience. But we don't, but where do we don't need a 4th dimension. Okay, so time is a 4th dimension. Okay, so I think time's a little different. But we don't need any more dimensions. We have the 3 here. Now, if there's another dimension beyond experience, that's possible. Okay, but in terms of what do you need to live? Well, you need space to move. It's very simple. I don't see where else you need to move. I mean, so maybe a life after death experience could be a different dimension. I think that's one possibility. I think people that have life after death experiences, that could be a different dimension. I think that's really cool and something that is a field of experimentation. But I like looking at things sort of like as real as possible. I'm a Midwesterner, okay? I'm very basic and simple. I don't like to add things to my understanding that are not needed, because I think we have enough in front of us. We have a wondrous world of nature sitting here in front of us that we're living in, and that's plenty. Exactly.
Let me just a couple more questions, and I'm just they're coming in, so I want to go ahead and send them to you.
Sure.
It says, Philip, is your definition of God, our Creator, from the level of what is referred to as the Anunnaki Creator, or the Vishnu, the Creator as in Genesis, or God in your definition, or is God in your definition much higher than that?
I think all those terms mean about the same thing.
Okay.
I think that they're just different perspectives on the same thing. I mean, I try to use neutral words to describe what I'm talking about. Okay. Now, for example, Carl Jung, the famous psychologist who wrote the book Synchronicity. Most people have heard of Carl Jung. He believed in a collective unconsciousness. That's what he called it, a collective unconsciousness. And of course, the Hindus, they call it Brahman. And then there's a big book, a book by Aldous Huxley called The Perennial Philosophy, where he talks about how all religions are based upon a base of being, a oneness, a unity at the core of the self. So I think all these things are saying the same thing. If you read, which is that there is a unity at the core of what we are. And that unity is what I call God, the unity of spirit. It's the collective unconsciousness. I'm not creating a new God here. This is the same God that people have talked about throughout the ages. They've called it different names. There have been, I do think, messengers of God and prophets. All these things can be given meaning. But at the end of the day, all these individuals are messengers. They're part of the story of God. So I like to me, it's very important for me to be all-encompassing, to bring different beliefs into the system. I'm not ruling things out because I think that a theory has to explain the world, not dismiss part of it because you don't understand it or accept it. Does it mean I believe everything is true? No. I do think you have to apply logic and criticism and evidence, like I've said before. But I like to try to bring everything into the picture.
Well, and again, and I think what you're saying is that at the end of the day, a lot of the way a person, the way people, groups of people throughout the world view God, it's kind of the same thing, but everybody has a little different take on it, a different name for it. But at the end of the day, it's still kind of all the same thing. It's just interpretation from different people at different times, at different places.
Exactly right. It's just like to use a very sort of mundane example, like a story that's retold, and people are going to put their own spins on it. I mean, I could use the example of a joke. You retell it 100 times, and pretty soon the lawyer joke is now an engineer joke, or it's a priest joke. I mean, everything, it changes. But the key thing is uniting Western religion, where we tend to project God outside of us, with Eastern religion, where it's inside of us.
Right.
That's the key. That's the key connection. And so that's exactly the same thing, though, which is that it's a different way to experience God. I think the folks in the Bible didn't understand God, so they projected it outside of themselves instead of realizing that they were living the story. And so, but again, you're right. It's different people taking different spins on it from different perspectives with different educations and worldviews and mindsets and cultures.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Fringe Radio Show. Phillip, again, I want to thank you so much for being here tonight with us. Where can our listeners get your book from?
Well, Amazon.com is, of course, the easiest way to get it. It's on Kindle and hardcover, and then it's available through the website. I'm not sure what bookstores it's at, wherever the listeners are, so Amazon probably is the best choice there. And, of course, Barnes & Noble, too.
Gotcha. Now, you do a radio show as well, too, correct?
Right. I have a show on webtalkradio.net called Conversations Beyond Science and Religion, and I used a pen name for a while, Philip Meriton, and I've unified myself. I'm one person now. I'm Philip Comella. And I have a show where I talk with people from paranormal researchers and spiritualists to science professors. And we talk about some of the same things we've said here, but the idea is to have a no-holds-barred conversation without preconceptions, because I think it's really healthy. So that's what I do. I do it once a week. It's a podcast, and I've been lucky to talk to some great people around the world on these issues here that we've been covering.
Well, and again, it's about what it all comes down to is it's about being open-minded. That's the biggest thing in opening up people's minds. And I would assume that from time to time you get some people that probably highly disagree with you, as I do, but not me with you, but I mean as we do here with our show. But I think there's a lot of these topics that just need to be discussed and get thrown out there and at least get people thinking. If they walk away and think about one thing or got one thing out of it, I feel like we've done our job. Right,
exactly. That's what it's all about. Is being open-minded, being objective, and thinking for yourself. I mean, all these things we were raised with, and unfortunately, we go through life and there's so many distractions. We have so many doubts in our heads, so many inhibitions about questioning authority or questioning the teacher or the preacher or whatever. But over time, I think it's just a matter of getting the courage and being open-minded and coming to your own conclusions. And I completely agree. That's where it all begins. It begins with an open mind.
Do you get it with paranormal researchers? And again, we've had so many here on this program over the years. Again, I feel that's a topic that is so interesting. I've had many different guests on, local paranormal researchers that have been in the studio here with us that go out and help people out. I've had people like Thomas Fusco on, talking about everything being energy in some way, shape, or form, and these paranormal experiences, entities, whatever we call them, can be a form of energy. And again, is a form of energy another dimension? It's just hard to say.
Right. And the beauty is that if you look at the paranormal, like I said before, as claimed experiences, and then you test them, if the evidence looks pretty good, then the question is, well, how do you explain how these things are possible? See, that I think is what's so much fun about the paranormal, because I reached a conclusion pretty early in my life that it didn't make any sense to say that they were all fake.
Right.
And so once you accept the reality of them, to me, I have to ask the next question, which is, how can these things possibly occur? And that helped me go to where I wound up, which is where we talked about the real dream motif. I think it explains it, because I like to make sense of things. I also think it shows that we live in an enchanted world. These things that people don't understand, shows that, the paranormal, it shows that the world is a richer place than we sometimes give it credit for. There's more features to it. And whether it's interdimensional, whether you want to use those terms, or whether you just want to say, as you say, shrouded in a little bit of mystery, I think it adds to the beauty of our world and the wonder of our world.
Here's a question that came through for you. It said, Philip, when humanity creates genetically engineered new life forms or clones, are we playing the role of God ourselves as far as creating life?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of, and I think that it's outlawed. I'm not a big fan of cloning life. I would agree with that. I think that's going too far. I think it's mankind. I think it is mankind trying to be a different kind of God. The mechanical God. So I'm not a big. I don't think that is a worthwhile pursuit. If there's some features of stem cell research and cloning that I think betters humankind, if it increases the food supply, for example, if it helps us feed people, if it helps diseases, I think that's different. But in terms of creating clones of people, I think that's going too far. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. I don't know. I know there's been stem cell research and so many other things. I don't know. The cloning thing, it seemed, it was cloned a couple of sheep or a couple of animals. Yeah. And that kind of started the ball rolling, and truly talking about playing God. What's on the future for you, Philip? Are you going to continue on with the study and research? Another book in the works? What's up for you?
Well, I have a mission to change our worldview. I want to be part of the group of people, and it's not just me. There's plenty of other people going down this path. I want to be part of the group that helps topple materialism, that helps us change our mindset and reach a more united, holistic, humane view of the world. So everything I do, I have many articles in the works. I do have another book in the works. I will continue my radio show and speaking and maybe teaching. I mean, this is what I'm driven to do. So as I said at the beginning, it's my deep burning desire. Maybe it's a curse as well, but to me, it's the way for personal salvation as well. Because I want to live in a better world, and I just want to do my part to make it happen.
Well, and again, I feel that you are taking all your time and putting your research together and producing a book like this for people to read, and again, just being open-minded. And the other thing, my hat's off to you too, is being I am not, but I mean, as a lawyer, as a professional, I mean, that says a lot about you too. I believe, you're a practicing attorney, and you obviously believe very strongly in this. And there's a lot of people that whether they're doctors, lawyers, what have you, those professions that we all look up to. I commend you for taking on this work and putting this book out and going out there and preaching it, as far as teaching others about it and sharing your thoughts.
No, I greatly appreciate it, because I'm one voice out there, and we all have to do our part to advance the ball, I think. And I'm just trying to do the best I can to lay it out there and open minds, let people think through things in a different way. And they either don't accept it, or throw it out the window. But the key thing is looking at the other side of the argument, taking things from a different perspective, being open-minded, and you know what? We do, I think, have a good chance of improving the state of our mind and therefore the state of the world if we are open-minded and we do pursue a little bit more optimistic and unifying worldview.
I agree with you 1,000%. I'm going to go ahead and let you go, Philip, and get back to your weekend. And again, I want to thank you so much for being here for us tonight. Do you give besides your radio program? Do you give talks in the Chicagoland area at all?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I periodically give talks, whether around Chicago, and I'm just lining things up right now. So that's something else that I'm doing as well.
Well, it'll keep you busy. Well, have a great weekend. Again, you can go find Philip's book, The Collapse of Materialism, Visions of Science, Dreams of God. His website is thecollapseofmaterialism.com. Take care, my friend. Thank you so much for being here, and it was an honor to speak with you and learn about everything you're doing.
Hey, thanks a lot, Pat. Thanks for the great questions from you and the listeners. I had a lot of fun. I appreciate being able to talk with you about these really big questions.
Well, now if we can just get the big answers, I think we'll have it made.
Yeah. Well, it's a long process, that's for sure.
Okay, Philip. Hey, take care. Have a good night.
Okay, same to you. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.